All right, so an official welcome to everybody. So happy to see all your beautiful faces and your names pop up there. My name's Cynthia Good, and we want to welcome you to this Pink Power Alliance Zoominar. Today, we're talking about well-being. This is a huge deal right now as we quote emerge from this pandemic into what is quote a new normal. Changes still constantly occurring, so much uncertainty we continue to live with, and even in the news headlines today, so many issues with crime and violence, and still a lot of pressure in terms of race and gender issues that have really come to the forefront. We have all dealt with a lot over the last year and a half. We are still moving past this. Millions of women actually have left the workforce over the last year and a half. There's really has been more economic uncertainty for women, especially due to a large degree to the gender gap, the pay gap, the concentration of women in the highest hit sectors, and not to mention with the stress, with the extra workload, working from home, often managing kids, often managing caretaker roles for others in our lives, all that extra unpaid workload on the backs of women. Never mind the uncertainty that we face in terms of health and wellness. So really the question now is, as we dive into this new era, what have we learned? Where do we go from here? And how can we create a better life with more well-being, even more than we had before, mentally, physically, financially, emotionally? Because we want you to walk away today with actual tools that you can use to improve your sense of well-being now. We looked it up, and the definition for well-being is the state of being comfortable, healthy, or happy. Sounds so simple, but harder to achieve. And it's a big deal. Nearly half, 48% of executives surveyed, this is according to a recent study by the American Psychological Association, 48% of those executives cited well-being as the number one workplace issue, the issue they were most concerned about in the workplace. So let's just dive into this. We have a fantastic group of thought leaders, experts who are going to share some of their wisdom and their personal experiences with all of us this morning. So I want you to meet our three featured experts, from a guru who is a meditation and Qigong wellness expert, Jason Smith. Hi, Jason. How are you?
Hi, Cynthia. I'm awesome. Thank you so much for having me. What a wonderful reason to be together today. Thank you so much.
Thank you for being here. Also with us, Katie Kirkland. She's a director of benefits and well-being at the Southern Company. Hi, Katie.
Hi, Cynthia.
How are you? I know you have 6 kids at home, right?
I do. They're not here right now. They shouldn't pop into the Zoom screen. But yeah, ranging from 6 to 19. So it's a busy.
That's a lot. Yeah, so it's going to be great to get your perspective. Also joining us, Kira Lynn Johnson. She runs a division of Delta Airlines. Talk about stress, right? The airline industry, so hard hit. Kira is a vice president and chief diversity, equity, and inclusion officer at Delta Airlines. Kira, thank you so much for being here. How are you?
Hi, Cynthia, and hello, everyone. I'm doing okay, and I think today we'll probably talk about that. It's okay for us to sometimes just be doing okay, but I am certainly on the path to sustained well-being.
Well, I'm just so thrilled that you're here, because you must have been going through so much just in your industry. Talk a little bit right off the top about what that has been like for you personally and how you're managing.
So it's interesting, you're right. I think we learn quickly in this industry to respond effectively to crises, but often we're responding to a singular crisis. And so when I think of how all of those things intersected, we essentially had what felt like the world being in a version of crisis. We had the airline industry that really was experiencing something that we've never experienced before. And let's be clear, I've been with this industry for years. So I've been through mergers, bankruptcy, 9/11 with this company. But I will tell you, 2020 was like a year like none other. And then on top of it, I think, we were also dealing with the social justice issues of 2020. So it was really a challenge to think about
Right.
processing all of that through the lens of a professional, but importantly, through the lens as a person. And the
Right.
reality is, my profession is what I do, but the person is who I am. And I realized I had to first take care of who I was before I actually could be of any benefit to my company.
Right. And I've really been thinking about you a lot about you through all this, because every time I have seen you and we have, had conversations together face to face, you've always struck me as being very powerful, very upbeat, and always optimistic. And I just thought, not only do you have obviously the personal side, which we've all been wrestling with in different ways, but also in your leadership role, the head of DE and I, so many others looking up to you as well. And how has that been for you? And what have you seen, especially for the women who you work with and oversee and who turn to you?
I've found that this has been really the season of supporting one another like never before. And it's interesting to hear you. I feel complimented by that description, because I often ask people, people will say, are you just always that optimistic? And the reality is, I've never really described myself as an optimist or a pessimist. I tell people, they said, do you see the glass half empty or half full? And I said, I would be the one that just sees that there's liquid in the glass. So I really describe myself as just a realist.
Wow.
But the reality is, sometimes being a realist gives me life and things in ways that I can process it and actually solve for things that maybe need improvement, or to celebrate those things that are going really, really well. And I think what I found in this period of time, yes, there have been women who have needed to lean on me, but I've taken great comfort that I've been able to turn to people I never thought I would have turned to before, and realize that there is a village of support and there's a community that I could also lean on. So in the midst of all that we went, in some ways where it felt like we were isolated in different ways, whether through crisis or even through leveraging new technology, I actually found that I expanded my village of people that I could actually lean on. And I think that same culture was replicated here inside of our company. I would say the women of Delta in many ways probably felt stronger and even more connected than ever before through the crisis.
That's really great to hear. It sounds like so many people, some actually have not, but so many people have taken this as an opportunity to reach out and lean on others for support. I want to go to Jason Smith because I want you to hear a little bit about his story specifically, and then we'll get into some other things. Jason is a health and well-being coach. Sacred Dynamics is his company. He helps high-profile individuals achieve self-realization. The interesting thing about this to me is that he's dedicated his life to this after having a pretty dramatic personal transformation. He was dealing with a stage 4 cancer health journey, as he calls it, and a shift in his, behavior and thinking enabled him to heal, and he's really sharing that perspective with others. Jason, tell us a little bit about your story, and I'd love to know what you're seeing in terms of the women, the powerful women who you work with. What are they dealing with?
Sure. Thanks, Cynthia. And I just wanted to comment, Kira, you beautifully spoken, and thank you so much for sharing it. It's a breath of fresh air to hear someone who's aware of their potential and is willing to step into it. So wonderful. Thank you so much, Cynthia. To put my story in the shortest version I can, before I had mentioned yesterday, we had our short call, and I had mentioned the BC, before cancer thing. And, that's kind of how I refer to a stage of my life where I was, in a typical sense, looking for success and kind of striving to amass wealth, and what happened was everything that I had placed in a very high significance started to erode as my health eroded. And so everything that seemed so significant and so meaningful, that had a grasp over my attention and could grasp my energy and put me into stressful situations, all of a sudden it had no significance whatsoever. And so that those steps along the path for myself, it ended up getting quite dramatic. And I went to, there was a point where I was being advised that I had about 3 weeks to live. And I was in a very, a very broken down situation physically. But what's interesting is that transition really started to awaken as the components of my life that were held in such regard that they could hold me in such stress, they didn't have any grasp. If I was going to be gone, they meant nothing. And it just kind of started to remove things that were really in the way of the more authentic version of what's here. And it really propelled me in order to find a way to live. As you've heard, they say you don't know how strong you are until being strong is your only choice.
Right.
And so this is kind of where one gets placed up into these tests. And, in my situation, the tests were they were quite large, but each person in their own way is going through these tests. And I find that this opportunity we have right now in our world is kind of like one of those things where it's pressing us and squeezing us and pushing us. And that's kind of the mother of invention. That's kind of how we start to break through areas that we couldn't previously.
So can you tell us just, Jason, in a snapshot, because I want to get to Katie, but how did you do that? How did you make your way back? And I love that, that forced you to put things in perspective. We don't want everyone who's participating in this conversation to have a crisis like that.
Sure.
How did you turn that corner?
Sure. Thank you so much. The springboard for myself had a lot to do with once a bunch of obstacles were removed in my path, let's say, per se, emotionally, all of a sudden it seemed that I had a lot of free space to utilize my attention towards something that could be much more beneficial now. And that's one of the things that I wanted to mention, that you had asked about what I'm seeing with powerful women. And one of the big things I'm seeing is that, there is a lot of distortion in our fields. There's a lot of misinformation. There's a lot of people that are not getting what they need and not being appreciated for what they need. And we are kind of at a point where the heat's being turned up, and it's really forcing us to search inside. And so that's that forcing to search inside and be willing to do what it takes to wake up to it.
Okay, that's great. And I want to hear some more specifics on that in a little bit, but let's go to Katie. Katie Kirkland is a director of benefits and well-being at Southern Company. We already talked about, she's got this big family at home. Katie, tell us how you've been holding up and what has helped shore you up, and also what you are seeing other women experience within the organization, some of the challenges we're facing.
Yeah, I mean, this last 16 months has been, it's been a lot for everybody to process, as we've all said. And, after the initial trauma and getting through what, being home for so long, I think a lot of people started to turn the corner and appreciate some of the things that they maybe didn't have before, some of the flexibility they didn't have before. It gave people time and space to connect with their families in a different way. To explore things like hobbies. And, you had to keep busy while you were staying at home. So I think there was a lot of trauma and a lot of challenge that people went through. But at the same time, I feel like it's like human nature. People came through and found a way to make something out of it. And so we're seeing a lot of that. And I think, as a company, we're embracing how can we change along with that to help support people in that flexibility. And I think it's so much more evident with women too, who usually have all the caregiving responsibilities and wear all these hats. And now, instead of having to choose which hat they wear, there's a little bit more flexibility to do better and do good at all the things on your plate.
Okay, great. And we're going to dive into, some more specifics for everybody. But first, we really want to see how everybody is doing who's participating today. I'm wondering how you are with your well-being. So we want to do a poll. Lisa Herman, meet Lisa, everybody. She's awesome. Wave, Lisa. She's going to pop these questions up for you so we can see what keeps you from having greater well-being now. And if you can just go ahead and click whichever as many that apply, what are some of these things that keep you from having greater well-being? Is it isolation? Is it added responsibility at home? Added stress due to health concerns? Work-related anxiety? Less physical activity? Irregular sleep? Lack of a routine? And let's see, unbalanced diet, heightened sensitivity around race and gender issues. Would love for everybody to weigh in, and we'll take a look in just a minute. I think that we'll be able to pop up the results from this on the screen. And Kira, I'd love to know, once we see the results, what you think about it, because this is going to be really interesting. Go ahead and click all those that apply. And then as soon as everyone has had a chance, we can see Lisa has popped this up right now. Wow, the biggest one by far, 88% of the women today surveyed say work-related stress and anxiety is the biggest issue. Are you surprised to see this, Kira? Don't take it off, Lisa. Leave that up while we're talking.
Yeah, not at all surprised. I think what I'm also not surprised to see is how many things also have additional weight there. I found even as I was going through, it was more of an exercise of what I felt like I didn't actually have to check versus,
Good point. Yeah.
like it's like, yep, a lot of those really applied. So not so, surprised. And I think 2020 just exaggerated what I would say is a degree of just stress that women feel in the workplace anyway. And so, you multiply that by 2020 and not surprised at all.
Yeah. And Katie, what do you make of this?
I'm not surprised either. Work-related stress has been at the top of our lists, our engagement studies. Everybody around the workplace is wondering how to adjust to this, what the new normal is going to look like. And, it just compounds with other stresses in their lives. So I think it's the new wave. The new health and well-being wave is how to address and cope with that kind of stress and anxiety.
Excellent. And I want to go to Jason. I want to ask you two questions with a brief answer, if possible. First of all, I want to know what you checked. And number two, I really want to dive in and talk about the stress and anxiety. 88% of the women on this call said that was the number one issue. The number two greatest issue was lack of physical activity. I'm one of those. And then tied for third place, increased responsibility at home and irregular sleep. That's a lot to deal with. Jason, tell us which one of these did you check?
Wow. I have to tell you that this was for myself. This was just, I'm going random on this only because these don't have effects on myself individually, which is why I'm in the position to be of assistance for others. But I did choose I chose unbalanced diet. I understand work-related stress was way up there for certain. I chose it only because it's one of the things that a lot of women don't, are in this scenario where they're in a high stress situation and they're choosing the wrong things and the simple things to eat. And that gut irregularity is one of the things that's causing the issues with the health concerns, with the immune system. And so the reason I picked it was only because the immune system is kind of the thing that we really want to pay attention to during these times. And so stress, obviously, these are things that shut down the immune system. Now, if I could speak towards the work-related stress, I would definitely say that from my experience, there are a lot of people that are on the wrong seat in the bus. There are a lot of people that are doing jobs that they're just not really happy with. It's not something that is promoting their greater skill sets, or it's not something that they're feeling that they belong to something that is that is valuable and meaningful. And so for myself, it seems that there seems to be people that are on the wrong seat of the bus. And I can tell you that if there was ever a time, in my perspective, to change your seat, I'd say it's now, because where is your normal? So since that doesn't exist anymore anyway, it's kind of an interesting time to look at it and say, what at this point that we're at in our lives, is it that we want to have a really unhappy situation with our job and then not be happy with the rest of our lives? And I think that that's kind of being called into place here.
Right. And then the other question is, and I know just the women that we know and we encounter day after day, they are in jobs that inspire them. And yet, they're working 24/7. We hear from women,
Sure.
they say they don't get out of their seat or off the Zoom, sorry guys, all day long. And then,
Yeah.
their second shift starts, which is they're taking care of aging, parents, or they're taking care of kids. And that's a lot.
Sure.
They don't have any time for themselves. I want to go to Katie. Katie, are you surprised by seeing these results? Work-related stress, number one, type for number two, responsibility at home.
Well, I am not surprised at these results at all. It's something that we're dealing with all the time. The good thing is that there are some things you can do about it that you can that can support women and can support folks in the workplace. The first is really that I see is, you can get help. You don't have to be in a situation where you are at absolute crisis to reach out and get help. And one of the things that we promote is utilizing your employee assistance program. A lot of folks don't realize that they have access to free counseling, free resources that they can go and talk to somebody about something, from everything from stress, anxiety, to your children struggling in school because they've been virtual for a year and a half. And so that's a resource that you can look for, that we promote to folks, is that employee assistance program.
If I could add one thing, if you don't mind, if I just stepped in for a moment, Cynthia. I think we lost Cynthia for a second.
I think she's on mute.
All right, there I am. Go ahead, Jason.
Thank you. And thank you, Katie. Absolutely. The one thing I wanted to mention is, and I think this is really, this will make sense across the board, is that there is there seems to be a very consistent situation with powerful individuals in business where they seem to understand the moves that they need to make in the business sense, but they don't seem to understand what moves they need to make on this primary institution here, the primary business.
Yeah.
And so right. So the primary business has 70 trillion employees. Those are your cells. And so if you were to take and go into a third party kind of a mindset, and you said, look, if I were to operate the way that I'm operating my business here in my business out there, we'd be operating in a negligent fashion because we're not doing what we need to balance out what's going on with our employees. We're not in a general sense here. And so this is one of the tools that I use with powerful women who have, can have a really large business they're operating, and yet they're running negligent on this business. And it's interesting because, as Katie said, the help is right around you, but for some reason, a lot of times people aren't reaching out for that help, and they're not reaching out for it. And
what do we do about it? Reach out for the help. I know you're really big on breathing. I want you to talk really about breath, if nothing else, the last year and a half, with regard to the civil unrest, police brutality, COVID. It's called attention to the fact that we need to breathe. And I find myself some days so busy that I forget to that conscious breathing. So if you can just give us 3 specific things we can do to circumvent this.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, breathing for sure. I mean, one of the things that's interesting is that I'm teaching people who have incredible skill sets how to breathe, and it's almost it's wonderful and it's hilarious at the same time because no one taught me to breathe either. And so we're kind of like, hey, I know how to breathe. In fact, it does it on its own. And it's like, well, hold on a sec. Here's the interesting fact. The interesting fact is that we've been getting a lot of messages about breathing in our environment. We've been getting messages about
how do we do it? Tell us, how do we do it?
All right.
Because I've got to get back to Kira.
Fair enough. So one of the ways that I think would be, and probably in a breakout, it would help But consciously breathing is when you're taking your system and you're putting your attention that you're going to inhale and exhale, and that's where your focus goes. Unconsciously breathing means that the autopilot does it. The autopilot is a shallow chest breathing. We're not getting the amount of oxygen we need just on a typical breath. And so imagine that you've got about a 30-40% deficit consistently just in oxygen. And that's where we're at on the breathing side. So if you can take 10 minutes out of your day, and the best times are in the morning and the night before bed, when you wake up and when you go to sleep, because this is when you're in that subtle state. And all you want to do is you want to close your mouth and start circulating in and out through your nose. And what happens is that what it does is it starts to give you this bridge between all of the different parts of your system that all get together and give you access. Otherwise, you're in a shallow chest breathing. You're easily pinged by your environment. Stress ensues. And so just taking 10 minutes to circulate full breathing and initiating with the belly instead of the chest
I love
makes a
it.
huge difference.
Got it. Thank you. I know that's so basic, but it's so important. Kira, does that resonate with you? What did you do personally? Did you do meditation? Have you done that kind of mindful breathing? What's kept you on track through all this?
So that's so good. And I came today as much of a consumer as a sharer, because I don't know that, except for maybe people like Jason, I don't know that many people who have this box checked in their life. But I'm glad, because I do feel sort of affirmed, because I did do some of the things that Jason said. As an example, I was always taught breathing intentionally through the lens of singing. And maybe like when you think of swimming, I never learned about breathing as a well-being exercise or as a part of my well-being. I think it actually was even silly to me when, the Apple Watch came out and it would tell you to breathe. I thought, breathe? I didn't get it. And then in 2020, it felt like the world started talking about breathing. So my routine was at night. And based on what Jason has just shared, I think I'm going to see if I can, amp up my mornings, because sometimes I start my mornings too fast. But at night, that is just my time of peace. It's the time when my home is quiet, everyone's asleep, things are quiet, and there is no reality TV on TV to get my attention. So at night, and for me, the definition of night, because I'm a night owl, is usually after 11:30 p.m., is usually when I have some really intentional time of breathing. And so I'm a person of deep faith, so it often is prayer, meditation, but I did last year incorporate intentional breathing, and it's really made a world of difference. It also makes me sleep better. So I think that's also why I associated it with a nighttime activity. But I'm going to consider what it would be if I started my morning, not just with prayer and devotion, which is how my mornings start, but also adding that breathing exercise in the morning as well.
And I do want to emphasize that Kira just said she starts the morning with prayer and devotion. She didn't say email. Those emails, right? So I want to go back to Katie, and I've got another question for Kira. And everybody, I'd love to see you weigh in on the chat. Please take advantage of the chat function. If there's something you found interesting that resonated for you, or something you do, share it in the chat. Also, if you have any questions for our experts, let us know. And Lisa will kind of be monitoring that. And jump in, Lisa, when you see something and want to bring it forward. And I want to go back to Katie, but first, Kira, I've got to mention, you are the head of DE&I at Delta Airlines. 25% of the people participating today said what kept them from experiencing greater well-being is this heightened sensitivity, when it comes to these issues of race and gender that have been really in the forefront lately. Talk a little bit about that and what you're seeing, and what is Delta doing about that?
Yeah, in fact, we are doing a lot in that space. And one of the things we're doing is we're getting people comfortable leaning into that discomfort of topics that perhaps aren't new, but topics that we have just historically not really talked about a lot at work. So one of the things that we really share at the company is you really can't solve for things you can't understand. And in many cases, you can't even unpack things that no one has even told you how it got in the suitcase. So we actually have spent a lot of time in 2020 educating our employees on these issues that aren't new, but are maybe new to our conversations in a work setting. We've also spent a lot of time giving our employees opportunities and outlets to have these, in small group conversations where you truly can bring your real questions, those questions that maybe you wouldn't ask in a big employee group meeting, and really talk about issues. We found it just giving people those platforms and those forums, and some of them are led by our CEO. He's done a series of what we call Let's Talk About It sessions, but some of them candidly are kicking off staff meetings or held in break rooms. So we've really created a culture where conversation is the norm around topics that people have historically been taught to not talk about at work. And the reality is, I tell people these issues aren't like, check baggage, they're carry-on bags. So I can't walk into work and check those at the door. I bring them with me. And so often just giving people that outlet to say, hey, here's what I'm dealing with today. This is what I've been thinking about today, really gives people an opportunity to know that it's not okay. It's not only okay to be feeling it, but it's okay to acknowledge that you're feeling them.
Oh, I love that. So really open those lines of communication to give people a chance to be heard. And you can't check who you are at the door. That's a really great point. I want to go back to Katie and talk about what else is Southern Company doing to help foster greater well-being for the employees so that we can all benefit from learning that. And then I really want to challenge everybody here to think about their personal challenges and what's helped them so that we can go into a brief breakout and share some of that deeper, more personal stuff. But Katie, tell us, what are you thinking right now?
Yeah, we have really focused on the family and focused on family benefits, which include expanding our caregiving benefits to include a company called Bright Horizons that'll launch later this year, where it helps support employees through having conversations around aging parents, backup childcare, even supporting special needs children and tutoring. So really the broad expanse of what caregiving can define. The other thing we're really focusing on is getting back in person for physical exams and wellness physicals, because we've gone a year and a half without seeing doctors and being in person with folks. And, we see people's health suffer. You miss things, you miss that preventive screening and end up in a worse position that you might have been had you not gotten it. And so we're encouraging folks to really get back in person to embrace their health and see their doctors. So we're trying to focus and meet folks where they are right now, and give them the tools and resources and support to really pursue improving their own well-being.
I love it. Thank you, Katie. That was just really well said. I want to invite everybody now to think about your own situation. We're going to go into a breakout room, smaller groups. Jason's going to be facilitating one of those, and hopefully Jason maybe talk a little bit about breath. But I really want to challenge everybody to think about what is the number one thing on your mind that's been the biggest challenge, and encourage you to turn your camera on if you can for this portion. We found that women are 25% less likely than men to keep their camera on during Zoominars. I think it adds to the conversation, certainly elevates the exposure for you, which is part of what we're trying to do here. Before you go into your room, get up out of your seat and look around and find, I don't know, this is a bad example, one thing in your environment that is added to your well-being on a personal level. And when you get into your breakout, introduce yourself and share what that one thing is. Lisa's going to pop everybody in for the breakout. This will be 10 minutes, 10 super short minutes. This is all off the record. She's going to stop the recording now.
And Cynthia, quickly, and while you're in the breakout room, your name may be incorrect if you use the link that I gave you. So it may show that you're me. If you'd like to change your name to your name so that you can actually meet people in your breakout rooms, I don't know if you know how to do that, but if you find the 3 dots on your screen, it'll say rename and you can rename yourself. But I am going to stop the recording. Wait just a second. Right now.
All right. See you guys.
Okay.
All right. Genevieve, you want to go first? What did your group talk about? And you make sure to turn yourself off mute so we can hear you.
Okay, yeah.
And listen, after Genevieve, I'm going to go to Danielle Pringle. Can I go to Danielle Pringle? to share what you learned in your breakout afterwards? Yay. Okay,
Yeah,
Cynthia.
we're in the same breakout. So
Okay, good.
I'll let Danielle talk, but we talked about the difference between being alone when the ladies in our group were used to being in an office with lots of people and
Right.
sharing with their team in person, and how isolating it is to be at home, especially with that looming "is it coming back" fear that, just sets you back if you really let yourself, go there. And it was a really real conversation, I have to say.
I love it. Danielle, do you want to add anything to that?
I'll just add that when we're talking about being alone, losing a family member, and then having to almost grieve by yourself, was very difficult. So.
Yeah, huge. Katie, are you seeing that, at the company that, we're wrestling with the loss of loved ones? I mean, this is big stuff.
Yeah, we're seeing an uptick in the folks taking advantage of mental health services. And, I think grief is a big one of those. And a lot of people, you don't maybe have stress and anxiety in your everyday life, and then you go through a situation where you lose a loved one. I went through something like that personally and didn't realize that I, really should have used help and reached out, because it wasn't a path I was used to walking, right? It wasn't a sidewalk I knew. And so, I think reaching out, leaning on others, family member support, therapy are things that you can really do to kind of not be as alone in that kind of a time.
And where can people go at Southern Company, and can people who aren't with the company access some of those resources too?
Yeah, we have a great EAP. We actually call it Life Source, which I love, is very positive. It resonates a little bit better than just employee assistance. But there are other resources out there. Sites like Talkspace, Better Health. Let's see, there's another one that I was thinking of. Ginger is another one that I think the folks at Delta use, Ginger. Our MD Live was the other one, where you can actually have a therapy session with somebody, talk about what you need face to face like this on the video chat. It's inexpensive, it's easy to set up, and it's readily available, and you can talk to folks or even chat with them through text. And anybody can sign up for those things. And it's just a great resource that I think is underutilized.
That's wonderful, because sometimes we really do need help and do need to talk, and it's so isolating. Kira, is there anything you want to add to that Delta provides or you've seen externally for other folks?
I think Katie covered it well. We have resources for living, is sort of what we call them. And, I love that same thing. It's because we're letting people know this is not just about being in crisis. These are just resources for living and living well. And, Ginger among them, share things available on the Share Care app. But I think at this point, the reality is what we're just encouraging people to do is we're normalizing things that for years people thought were services that you should just access if something was, tragically wrong. And we're saying, yes, you should, access them if something's really wrong. But the reality is they're resources for living. So some of the same ones that Katie shared and more.
Yeah, so you don't have to wait until you're in this dire crisis and really, you can go before then, hopefully, and get some support. Adele, I want to go to you. Adele is one of our featured coaches, as is Genevieve. And those who are new to the Pink Power Alliance program, one of the benefits of the membership is you do get to spend some time with a coach. Jason is as well, by the way. But Adele was the facilitator of your group. What happened in your breakout, and what did you learn?
We had an amazing conversation around mind chatter and being reminded over and over about the serenity prayer. Noticing when this thing goes off, that's adding an extra layer of suffering on top of the things everyone's trying to manage on a practical level with childcare. As long as this thing is going amok on top of it all, the suffering just gets worse. So just reminding ourselves of what can you change? What can you not? The courage to know the difference, and that reminder to just live in the moment. And that can do wonders, because if we all knew everything that could possibly happen and what might happen, everyone would just get paralyzed. So it's a lovely spiritual practice that has helped me yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And you know what, Del, that's a great suggestion. We'll include the Serenity Prayer. It's pretty brief in the recap. If you haven't seen it, I think you'll find it useful. 30 seconds for Jason, stop the mind chatter, dealing with uncertainty, any input, advice on that. And then Elisa, we're going to go to some solutions.
Sure. Thank you. If I could hit it right down the middle, I'd say to use your breath and to get and start to cycle a conscious breath, which is that your focus is on the feeling of the air coming and going through your nostrils, or looking at as you have done, looking at a plant and circulating that breath, because you need to neutralize. When you neutralize, you can process. And that's one of the situations we've got, is that we're stacking more things, but you have to neutralize in order to process the experiences. And so, the trick is really catching it in the morning and catching it at night. These are the low-hanging fruit of your day, and really getting in there and just neutralizing so that you realize there's no way out but in. So
Okay,
you need to be able to get in there and circulate. No?
I love it. I think that's going to make all the difference. We're going to show you some other solutions that we've been talking about. Really important to remember. Seek help from others, and you don't have to have a crisis for that to happen. Make sure you have some guilt-free me time, especially the moms out there and those who are taking care of others. So crucial. Establish dedicated spaces for work. Focus on the highest priority to simplify your tasks, and the importance of staying connected to others, which we've been talking about today as well. And Kira, is there anything else to add to that? And Katie, final words from you as well.
Maybe the only other tip, because I know you guys love really practical tips, in addition to breathing, the one thing I do at night that has helped me kind of be in the moment too, is that I just, I've always been a writer and always been a journaler. And this is not for people who like write professionally, and the gift is I actually can go back and I can see my fourth grade self. So I started journaling at a young age. But, even at night, I will just jot down things that, encourage me to make me understand, what do I want to do differently tomorrow? I also have Post-it notes in a lot of places. So if you were, you're getting a plain view, but if you were to look at my computer area, you're going to see these Post-it notes. And I'll just jot down things during the day that I want to come back to. Today I jotted down something Jason said. He says, you don't know how strong you are until being strong is your only choice. Jotted it down on a Post-it note. I'll put it there. Tonight, it'll probably get stuck on that page in my journal today. And it's just something that helps me go back, but then to be mindful in the moment. And often I will take one thought to sort of center my thinking a little bit, and, maybe even breathe around that thought. And just what I find is all those other things. Did the kids eat? What are they having for lunch tomorrow? What's on my agenda for tomorrow? Those things tend to go away. So it just may be a practical tip I wanted to share in case it helps someone else.
I love that. Thanks. And Katie, final wisdom from you.
Yeah, and we talked about this in our breakout session too, is, one of the things that's really helped me has been just making sure I'm hydrated. It's like it sets off everything for the day, making sure that I get 60 to 80 ounces of water, or hydration. Doesn't always have to be water. Other beverages other than alcoholic ones are also hydrating as well. And tracking that to make sure that happens decreases headaches, better skin, better sleep. And so that's the one thing we focused on and talked about as well.
I love it. Okay, thanks so much. And I do want to mention, recap what Jason said, if you guys didn't hear it, reminder for sleep, not to eat before you go to bed, turn off the Wi-Fi and meditate, and then the hydration that Katie reiterated. We're going to get to your questions offline. We're going to do my favorite part of the program. I think it's off the record. In a little bit, we'll stop the recording and do some informal networking. Hope you can stick around from that. A couple reminders of a few things coming up. Save the date. August 26th, next month's program will be on how to take advantage of the new technology to elevate your executive presence through formats like this. So crucial for you, especially if you're going to take advantage of continuing flex time. Take advantage of these new modalities to elevate your role in the organization. So important. We're going to talk about that. And then save the date. October 18th, Pink's 17th annual Fall Empowerment event. We will be broadcasting live from Atlanta. We've got some amazing speakers already teed up and more to come. There's a glimpse at that. Hopefully you're receiving the free e-note that Pink sends out every month, which will contain the recap from today and details about what's coming up next. You all are invited. You're our VIPs. Thank you so much to our amazing thought leaders and speakers for sharing their wisdom with us today. Thank you so much, Jason Smith of Sacred Dynamics, and Katie Kirkland from Southern Company, Carolyn Johnson from Delta Airlines. We really appreciate you three, and hope you guys stick around for this intimate networking with these powerful individuals. Until next time, bye everybody. We're going to stop the recording now. Take care.